I know my joy spot is 94 by 50. And so when things get tough out there, and they always will at some point in time, when I go into the gym, I'm a different person. Everyone knows it. I mean, I'm just happy. So I have a place to go that's a happy place, happy spot, as they would say. And, it's pretty simple.
Hello and welcome to the Beautiful Work Podcast. I am your host, Dan Krikorian. Each episode, we feature a special guest from all walks of life, and we ask them to explore the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the trials, and the triumphs in their chosen field. Writers, musicians, coaches, business owners, and everything in between. We peel back the curtain to hear their stories, to walk their paths, to find out how they breathe life into their beautiful work. Well, welcome back to the Beautiful Work Podcast. This is episode 31 in season 2 of the podcast, and we are rolling right along with another fantastic guest. Today's guest is Mike Dunlap, the head men's basketball coach at LMU, former NBA head coach, as well as international basketball head coach in Australia. We have a wide-ranging conversation about all things coaching, leadership, life, poetry, philosophy. We have a good time in this talk, as you'll hear in just a second. Outside of this podcast and being a college basketball coach myself, I'm also a musician, and earlier this past year, I released my 5th record, and you can hear that record as well as the other 4 on dankrikorian.com or beautifulworkpodcast.com. They take you to the same spot. And while you're there, please consider signing up for the newsletter for all the news on the podcast and on upcoming shows. And there's a new project that I've been working on once a month that we started back in September. That's been a lot of fun, and it is called the Beautiful Work Songwriter Showcase. And it takes place at the 1888 Center in downtown Orange at the Orange Circle, and a unique setup, intimate setup where 4 songwriters are together in a room and sharing songs and stories. And we've had 2 so far, and they've both been really fun to be a part of and to put together. And so we have more upcoming January 24th, as well as February 21st, and working on the March and April dates. And so go to the website and you can check out anything or everything you might be interested in, music, podcast, songwriter showcase. Well, I think that's it. So thank you guys for tuning in once again. And without further ado, let's get to the show. Mike Dunlap is in his 6th season as the head men's basketball coach of the LMU Lions, an NCAA Division I basketball program in the WCC Conference. Coach Dunlap began his coaching career in 1980 when, after graduating from LMU, became an assistant there until 1985. After assistant coaching stops at Iowa and USC, Dunlap became the head coach at Cal Lutheran University, a Division III program in the SCIAC Conference. While at Cal Lu, Dunlap won 3 straight conference titles and twice advanced to the Sweet 16. In 1994, Dunlap took a job with the Adelaide 36ers in the Australian National Basketball League, advancing there to 3 straight Final Fours. In 1997, Dunlap came back to the U.S. to take a job at Metro State, a D2 program in Denver, Colorado. In 9 seasons at Metro State, Dunlap led the Roadrunners to 2 national titles and twice earned the National Coach of the Year award. In 2006, Dunlap left Metro State for assistant coaching stops in the NBA with George Karl and the Nuggets, and then back to the NCAA with Arizona, Oregon, and St. John's. In 2013, Dunlap became the head coach of the Charlotte Bobcats for a season before returning home to LMU, where it all began. Coach Dunlap is here today to discuss his love of coaching, what he's learned from a career spanning 4 decades, and his passion for poetry. All right, I'm joined now by Coach Mike Dunlap from LMU. Coach, thanks so much for coming on. You're someone that everyone knows as a big-time basketball guy. You're always reading, writing, talking, speaking about the sport. But is there any hobby or passion or something outside of basketball that you love that maybe people don't know about?
Poetry. I love reading poetry and writing poetry. I keep it to myself because I'm a hack, but that's what I do.
Do you have any favorite authors or poets that are go-tos?
Mary Oliver is very, very, very special. Maya Angelou is special and a national treasure. And obviously, you have the platform with that. When I was here at LMU, I was an English major, so I was on the literature side of things, but the romantics are very special. Byron, Shelley, Keats, all of that stuff. Blake. I love reading, and obviously, quietly, I do my own poetry and have been doing it for years.
Is that something you'd ever release, you think, at some point later down the road, or just keep it to yourself?
In the plans down the road, go back to school, refine, work at it like I worked at coaching. It takes years and years to, I would say outliers, the 10,000 hour rule comes into play with Gladwell. So I need to spend more time at it, but that's absolutely on the horizon.
Awesome. We'll be sure to look for that when that time comes.
Or don't. But anyway, fire away.
Well, good. Well, hey, one of the things, myself being around you and knowing people that know you, is that you're such a great communicator, and you're someone that's communicating online and to your players and your staff, and you've been known as a great communicator. So who are some of the people that you've studied or that you've mentored you that have helped you become such a high-level communicator? I'm
so old, long in the tooth, that the list just keeps growing. But Newell and Wooden, I got unbelievably lucky in my life. And so those two, along with the guy that a lot of people don't know, Ed Gorgon, just reached around my neck and said, do this. And then George Raveling, Gorgon passed me on to George Raveling. And that was the person who helped connect that was a guy named Bergovich, who is in the NBA. But I backed into just fortune after fortune in terms of teaching. And then I was with George Carl and Ernie Kent, and it just goes on. Steve Lavin, just a mixture of wonderful guys that I learned as an assistant from all of those guys. And I could go on and on and on, and I don't offend anybody by missing anybody, but at the top of that, traveled with Coach Newell for the better part of, and his son, Pete Newell Jr., who a very fine coach out of Santa Cruz High School and a purist. He was the mortar for, keeping me connected with his father. But I worked 20 years of all that. So there it is.
That's great. Obviously, a library of guys that people can go study and learn how to be great communicators. You're someone as well that I know is really big on habits and routines. So what are some routines or habits that you have personally that you think have allowed you to be successful throughout your career?
There's a book out called The Miracle Morning. A shock jock, and the two of them were doing this thing with this young man who wrote a book. He had almost a near-death experience, was in a hospital for a long time, head on. But anyway, out of that book came an acronym called SAVERS. And it's basically 7 things that you do before you engage your day. And I just stole that, and I was doing some of all of it in an eclectic way, but it gave it a platform or organizational and an acronym. Basically, first one is silence dash meditation. Second one is affirmations. V is visualization. E is exercise. R is reading. And then finally, scribing or journaling. And so before I start to move right foot in front of the left in many ways, I go through that and click that off and try and get the majority of that done before I leave early in the morning for work. And that's really, there it is right there in a succinct way. That's what I do.
And when you say early in the morning, what time is that for you? 6 a.m., 5 a.m.? How early are you getting up and starting your process?
A lot of times 3 a.m.
3. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a 3 a.m.er, and then I get a cup of coffee, and then I can sit my little spot away. I don't bother anybody, and I love to read, and so I like opening my eyes and either doing that, or I've had something that the subconscious works on and I journal it right away. I think that you probably, the computer keeps going through the night, and if you're building a habit, George Raveling taught me this. He said, grab a yellow pad, never be without a yellow pad. There's a famous guy out back in the day that was the first to ever make a profit off the Olympics. You remember his name, Peter Uberoff. But anyway, he was a big yellow pad guy. And, when we met with them, you had to have pad and pen or pencil ready to roll and take notes on what somebody said. And then I go to parenting class, and then there it is. The instructor talked about the validation of anybody is when you write something, you're paying homage to not only paying respect, but you're writing down something that you can use if you note it. Because think about how many times you hear great things during the day, but it evaporates because you're not armed and loaded, with pad and pen. So anyway, I go down in there and I don't bother anybody in the house, and I start my day like that. And I've just been an early riser for whatever reason. And then I can take my time and, I'm up and out and at the office by 5 a.m.
And someone like yourself that is always on the go and is in charge of Division I program, how do you during the season monitor and keep track of your own stress levels?
Well, I think meditation and affirmations and visualization, if you don't make that a habit and you really go through that mentally, just a great point of how you filter your own stress and how you respond to that. And then the other thing is through a lot of just really smart people and being around them, we all have triggers, and the triggers there's a buildup to your trigger. And so I try to be sensitive to the fact I'm hungry. Oh, I need a 20-minute nap, whatever that is. In conversation, I can sense because I'm body aware. And I think people who don't miss work, who push through, you say, oh, that person is an iron horse. They're body aware. So they're kind of aware of when they're getting sore throat or whatever those habits are, to keep them the same. And that way you can avoid a lot of maladies through a long life if you're lucky, one, but two is if you're sensitive to it, and I'm body aware. So when I sense that stress is mounting in a high, and I'm not perfect, but I need to stretch the imagination, feet of clay, all that. But I would say that I'm very aware now of having great meetings, kind of average meetings, and when the meeting is squarely my fault that it didn't go the way I want, I think I just find the nearest mirror and say, hey, you didn't do well there. What can you do to fix it? And then I go on.
Sure. Now, Coach, you've been at you've been at
that's
almost
a lot. Sorry,
that's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
But you've been at almost every level of college and professional basketball. Is the stress level different at different levels? Have you found that to be true, or is it just depends on where you are?
I think it's disingenuous to say that it's different, because I think that a kindergarten teacher has multiple stress levels, and then you matriculate to a high school coach and to diss them in a way where I think as you ascend over to your NBA coach, it's all the same. It transfers truth. And I think, the key to success is managing those things as best you can, in the business, especially if you're willing to go to the thin air where the best live. You're not always going to be successful. And so I think it is not taking yourself so seriously. Second, saying, what did I learn? Because there are a lot of people that when they slam to the ground by some event or shortcomings, mine, then you say, I'm not very good, or, I'm going to stop doing the profession. And, me, that's silly. It's you didn't do well. What'd you learn? Okay, now go find another job. I've been in that position. And so I can, with a smile on my face, literally a smile on my face, share that frustration with people. But I don't have a lot of patience for people who just let go of the mob. They run into a wall somewhere and they go, well, I'm going to get out of coaching. Well, I'm burnt out. Well, you know what? You were responsible for your own burnout because you didn't take that day and go to your joy spots. So no one ever taught that guy or female to go to those certain things that lift you every given day. Because in any given day, the stress is going to mount or rejection comes in one form or another. And then you'll find how silly you are by overreacting to it, because it's a long journey. And if you just keep going off of getting beat down every now and then, you're going to be fine. But it's when you think everything's terminal, I call it terminal thinking. And that gets people in a lot of trouble. You bury yourself in a corner. And like 9 times out of 10, if you really are going to do a drill down, it's fault. And if it's not your fault, then it's easier to let go of, and you just keep marching forward. So anyway, that's my little diatribe on that.
Have you had to learn this the hard way? Like, was there a time earlier in your career where you did almost burn yourself out or go too hard, or have you always been someone that's able to find the balance?
I have never, ever felt burnout. I have felt tired at times, but for me to say burnout, I never gave myself that option, because I knew there was a tomorrow, and I knew I wasn't that good. I always worked off the template. I knew I was never the smartest person in the room, or even halfway the smartest person in the room. I always assumed everyone else was smarter than I was before I walked in the door. And then I would take notes. My listening would be acute. And then there were times where, I became narcissistic or whatever, but I pulled myself back when friends or loss of relationship in a friendship, and that felt that I was that. I own that. Eventually I came to own that and then get back on the rail. And they helped me, even if they were frustrated with me or had to walk away. I was never unwilling to say, you know what, that's my fault. I think you've got to really work through your own ego. Hey, Chris, to work through your own ego to, accept your frailties and then go on and have some fun with them, but a cup of coffee and a good conversation is out there. It's around the corner. So when things are tough, I just prefer to choose those elements in a given day where that person just lifts me up. I go find those people and put myself in front of them. And then selfishly, I'm with them for 10 minutes. And a lot of that I was frustrated around, it just evaporates. But you got to know how to do that. And I think there's a degree of humility to that act.
Mike Dunlap's long and winding coaching career reads like a page straight from Homer's The Odyssey. A protagonist leaving home to encounter countless twists and turns, long voyages filled with uncertainties lurking around every corner. Triumphs follow despair, followed by hope, followed by loss, followed by victories, followed by another journey. Coaches and leaders have often found a comfort in this type of journey. Always a new season, the next game, the next practice, filled with uncertainties, yes, but a chance to be renewed and steer the ship ever onward. What I've learned from being around great coaches like Mike Dunlap, who have survived and thrived in a difficult job such as coaching, is their ability, innate or learned, to move through cycles of wins, losses, and uncertainties with a special kind of resilience, one that allows them to learn and process from the darker turns the path can take, while also enjoying when the sun does shine and wind does fill the sails just right. One of Coach Dunlap's favorite poets, Mary Oliver, speaks of this ability to enjoy these victories in her famous poem, Don't Hesitate. It reads in part, "If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb." Coach, I want to pivot a little bit and go back in your career and ask.
Is that a front pivot or a reverse pivot?
We'll go front pivot.
Attaboy, because all front pivots lead to momentum into your jump shot. Reverse pivots are not good for
That's
having
right.
rhythm for your J, man. So
Right,
I love the front pivot. Go for it.
I got it. So we'll front pivot into this question. Earlier in your career, you were the head coach for Cal Lutheran, which is in the conference that I coach in now in the SCIAC. You win 3 straight SCIAC titles. You go to the Sweet 16 in 92 and 94. And then after that, you go and take a job in Australia with the professional team down there. What was that transition like, and what was your thought process at the time of going from a Division III all the way across the other side of the world?
Well, remember when I mentioned the romantics?
Uh-huh.
And Wordsworth, Byron, Shelley, Keats. Well, I had great idealism, and so my wife did too. And we always said we wanted to live off continent. So I was really young, and we picked up our tent and we moved it into Australia. I was going over there working and doing little clinics in Melbourne with a dear friend of mine, who Brian Gorgon, a 2-time Olympic coach for Australia, winningest coach in all sports in the history of Australia, a big-time coach in his own right. And I was going over there, and I wanted to recruit Australians, obviously, to Cal Lu or wherever I was going to go, and I knew I needed to build those networks. So selfishly, I was doing that, but I also was watching pro coaches. I was learning the international game, and I was teaching. They were hiring me as for 2 weeks to be a consultant. And I would just work with their guys over there. But I mean, oh my goodness, it was like going to the best fishing spot in Alaska. There's a river called the Kvichak where you can go and get silvers and reds like no other and think you're skilled, but they're just, you can damn near run across the river because that's how many of them there are in there. But nonetheless, I digress a little bit. But okay. I went over there because Molly, my wife, said, "Hey, let's do this." We had 2, Spencer and Holt. Our kids were 3 and 1, and we said, "Hey, what a great time to go off continent." I got an offer, lucky duck, to coach in the pro league there, the NBL, and in a community of about 1.8 million, Adelaide, and it was the big show in town. And a beautiful stadium. And here I go from Cal Lu, who didn't even have a 94 by 50. It was 90 by 48.
Right.
That was one of our, it was a beauty because when our opponent came in there and they were trying to figure out why the spacing wasn't working with their post passing. We already had those advantages. But anyway, what a wonderful opportunity, and wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And we lived on the ocean. I mean, ate a different kind of diet. Our kids loved it. Molly loved it. And then the challenge of coaching, half the team was older than I was. So I learned, again, to put myself right on the edge, and, got lucky, had some success over there. And the only reason I came back is my dad passed away, and I realized how selfish it was to have our two little ones away from family. So I brought them back. But the one thing you do sacrifice as an expatriate is your connections to your friends, and definitely your mom and dad and brothers and sisters. You're going to sacrifice birthdays and all of that. And you've got to know that before you head out on the plane. And we kind of didn't know what that was about. And we figured, hey, they can get on a flight and go. But, our parents were older, and all of a sudden, they got off the plane and they were staggered.
Sure. Right.
So we said, hey, let's go have a beer. They weren't interested. They wanted to find the sack and go to sleep. So anyway.
Well, I'd like to ask you about another experience going now. You come back and you have made multiple stops at Division I programs as an assistant and as a head coach, and then you eventually reach to the NBA, and you're working with Michael Jordan and the Bobcats. And I know after one season, that was no more, and then you come back to LMU. Can you talk about the transition back from the NBA to LMU, what that was like for you?
Yeah, I guess, the big page that's missing was Metro State Division II, and that was 9 years.
Absolutely.
And right. And then I knew that I had an offer to work for George Karl in the NBA, and there was 2 years there. And what a great opportunity. I walked across the street and I was an NBA assistant, which is an all-time ask when you're a Division II guy. And so my learning curve, again, was way high. And this links to your question, is that going and working in the NBA and then somehow finding my way to the Bobcats and now the Hornets, I learned a ton, and what a great opportunity. And then when that happened, I took a sabbatical year and went back into the hopper. I went over to Thibodeau. I went, to watch other great coaches, got the notebook out, and I was a kid in a candy store again. And then I wanted to finish my career at where I played, and that was LMU. And that was always somewhere in there if I could do it. I'd been offered the job before, but I chose a different route. And then I got offered the job on the sabbatical year, and I took it. And it's where I'm going to end my career, basketball coaching. Unless I'm a consultant, I would do that. But, if given that great, wonderful opportunity. But I wanted to finish my career at LMU to see if I could help this school lift the program, which it has not been very good since Hank died. And there are reasons and results, but, mightily trying to get it on the other side of the line.
And you guys definitely have been making that upward trajectory. The last few years, you guys have really
we are
done well.
No doubt about it. Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about, the culture of the program that you're trying to instill and where you see that is going for LMU?
Well, with the Gonzagas and the St. Mary's and BYU's and San Diego's Pepperdine, now Lorenzo there, and also I think Marty Wilson did a fabulous job there too. However, when you're looking at the top of the tree, and now you have one of the top 10 programs year in and year out in Gonzaga there, as a coach walking into these other programs, schools, whether it's Herb Sendek at Santa Clara or me, you better know that your talent's not going to be quite what theirs is. So you have to say all roads lead. When you look as an analysis and you're taking a program over, who's the best and what are you going to have to do to stay in the game with them to try and beat them? Villanova, Georgetown, and that was all out of tempo. And so he worked a formula of pass first people, and we took advantage of posting people up and also going to the free throw line and pounding the boards because our bigs were near the glass. And it's a formula that worked for us. And it's not Hank and Bo days, but people will come to the building winning first, style second. If you keep losing and you're playing fast, you're never going to get those people to your gym. So we were 13th in the country scoring defense last year. That's a ginormous identity is what I would say. So now we're forming an identity, and our culture is about finding players that'll buy into that style, e.g. of Virginia. You know, the criticism with Bennett at times, even at Virginia, has been, oh, it's boring, it sucks, and all that. Well, they're not saying that now. And they shouldn't have been saying it when he was taking probably fourth or fifth best talent at the best, and he's winning the ACC year in and year out. Well, one of the reasons is, you know, beyond his great teaching is tempo. And he's going to not let North Carolina run. And they got to deal with a piece of burlap, possession by possession, and they've got to deal with, yeah, exactly. And so that's what we're selling here, and now we're selling winning. So when people come to the games this year, they're going to go, oh my God, your recruits are better than the ones that you've had. We had a really good recruiting year this year and got a different kind of athlete, I would say, and competitor and all that. Not to slight last year's team, but people are watching that have come to practice lately and they're going, wow, you're a lot longer and a lot more athletic. But unfortunately, so's the league. The league's getting better, so we better keep up.
Sure. Obviously, having Gonzaga going to Final Fours and whatnot for the league, it's like you mentioned, all those teams have such great talent. You have been at all different levels, like we've mentioned, of the sport. And what have you learned from all your years of coaching about motivating young people to become part of a group?
Well, I would say beyond the motivation is every coach has an opportunity to select. And when you don't get the ones you want, you compromise your standard and you bring a kid in who is not motivated. It's awful. I just put it that way. It doesn't mean the kid's awful, but it's an awful experience for player and for coaching staff. So selection is really, really important. He may be underdone, but Belichick is a classic example of that. Gridiron Geniuses. And in that book, when he locks in, Mike Lombardi does on Belichick and the essence of Belichick was after competitors, maybe guys that weren't quite as talented, and the talented ones who wanted to try and hold the Patriots hostage year after year. He tells them, see ya. And yet he keeps winning because he's finding great competitors, guys who care. So when you get to motivation, it's putting a lot of motivated guys together. I don't know. You can inspire, but after a while that gets exhausting for you to have to jumpstart everybody. But I think for us, year by year, we're getting more motivated young men that are high-end competitors. If you throw a piece of steak out there in the middle of the floor, our guys are going to have a propensity to get it. I'll give you an example. In Ryan Silver's program, there was a kid named Jeffrey McClendon, and Earl Watson was at a car wash, and he said, hey, I've got a kid for you, and he can't make two with a pencil, but he is the most motivated, bone-crushing defender you've ever found. Well, Jeff, we ended up recruiting him, signed him, and he was the best defender in the WCC, and I cannot tell you how many games he turned around and won for us because he was a wolf. He was motivated. So on this thing of motivation, I think really the answer is finding those overachievers that are willing to go and come from programs like that. Now, the coach's job is to make every drill and every action competitive, time and score. I cannot emphasize that enough, so that there is a consequence for winning and a consequence for losing, because that's what the scoreboard does. So we don't blink in that when we build a practice plan and our guys get competitive, and I call it the art of peer pressure. And over time, we have these traditions or small traditions within our gym, whether it's cutthroat or whether it's a 2-minute fast break layup drill, and we make it really hard to achieve time and score. So one miss in 2 minutes will cost you your objective. And the guys know it, and then they start barking at each other. to perform better them than the coach. And as a moderator, I don't let them get abusive, but I will let brother get on top of brother. That's where I vehemently disagree with Wooden. Wooden said that in his culture, no player can criticize another player. But yet, if you read Wooden's story, there's a story about the stable, where Wooden did something where he was supposed to clean up the stable, and he threw some horse manure at his brother, and his brother whooped him. Well, that was the one time when the dad came in where the dad kind of let it go, And so my point is that peer pressure, when used appropriately, is unbelievable, and it has such a negative connotation, e.g. hazing. Well, that is negative. But what about peer pressure where you're teaching the older ones to teach the younger ones? And then it's the art of, that kind of arm around a guy and saying, hey, we don't do things this way, but here's how to do it. And so when you talk about motivation, nothing's more motivating than having a 3-year starter start to work with a freshman and show them the Lion way, the LMU way. And we now have that. We have all these young guys that we recruited this year, but our practices have been really seamless because our leadership is in place. So I think that's how you motivate.
Have you found that to be about the same across all levels, MBA, college, smaller college levels, guys get motivated by similar stuff, or is it different?
Well, the best motivator in the NBA, not arguable, is Popovich. And one of the things that Popovich did when he got the job, and it's written, he'll tell you about it when he's eating with you, is when David Robinson first got drafted and came into the fold, his dad was very, very ill and was in the hospital for a long time. And the first thing Popovich did was go and spend a week or thereabouts with Robinson's dad. And so my point is that was an act of tenderness. It was to show him, David Robinson, that he cared for more than just the player. So when you go to the NBA, you've got to go to the Lions roar or your best player. And and eventually he becomes a convert and becomes your voice. Mm-hmm. And wherever it is, Division 3, 2, internationally, you've got to make your way and ultimately cross the threshold where the players trust you and think you're competent. They can even disagree with you on 16 different things or how you vote for the president or whatever. But the one thing pro players care about first and foremost, does this guy know his material, and can he teach his material and help me get better so that I can make a livelihood out of this game? So, and I think players are like that. They smell when you're good at what you do.
Absolutely. I love that. Coach, just a couple more for you. I know you got to head to it, but I love asking this question to all the guests from different parts of different careers. But what's one of the best investments that you've made in your career?
So I go and get my car, and I've been an unbelievable traveler, and I will go find people that are teachers of the year. I'll go find the best assistant. I'll go find anybody that I think has knowledge. And so my point is that the investment is not in things. The investment is in great teachers. So that's what I do.
What are your ways that you continue to grow and learn? I know you're a reader, but do you, is it podcast? Is it just talking to people? What's your preferred mode of learning?
Reading, asking questions to the greats, writing notes, copious notes, and then recognizing and downloading myself that I'm not very good at what I do. I say, I can take that kind of comment and it creates a humility. And I'm always thirsty, and I wake up every day trying to get a little bit better about this because that's where master teachers live. I want to be a master teacher. I'm not there yet, but I'm working very hard to master my craft. And see, I think coaches get it wrong. They're after content and too much of that. And they should be after style of teaching and how young men and women learn. What are the 5 laws of teaching? What are the 6 great ingredients of a drill? Then you don't have to pursue that stuff. And it goes back to the old cliche about teach somebody to fish and they can eat for a lifetime. And,
Right.
and I think that methodology of learning and teaching is the essence of everything. And so I'm always pushing myself for knowledge. And, I want more knowledge because I don't think I know it all at all. I know I don't.
Sure.
And I have fun. The other part of it is that to enjoy people. I cannot tell you how much fun I have by putting myself in front of, just coaches and players and administrators that are good at teaching. It could be a number of people, but to me, that's just a blast. I mean, think about this. The majority of coaches, have teaching responsibilities in the building. They may have to do cafeteria duty if they're in high school. I get that. But my point is the life in a window of 18 to 22, my entire life. And that it's an absolute thrill to be able to do what I do,
Sure.
and an honor. So when you think like that, I just don't know that, being, unhappy has been part of my journey. I've been just lucky duck.
Sure. Well, I love what you said about the levels of teaching. And I know you're very active on Twitter. And
yes,
you recently did write about, the levels of teaching, which is a good teacher speaks to the intellect. An excellent teacher speaks to the mind, body, and feel. Great teacher speaks to mind, body, and emotions and reconnects to love of the game. And a master teacher does all three and teach principle of living through sport. And so it sounds like that is something obviously that you look for in other people as well. Coach, my last question for you before we close, of all the things that you do, what brings you the most joy in being a coach and in your career?
When light bulbs go on, they're not going to go on right away, but you can literally see a twinkle in a player's eye when he gets something. And I think that the hard work, you reap your benefits when you see somebody do something that's really hard and they struggle and they fail for X amount of days, weeks, months, years. And then all of a sudden there's this threshold moment, and I would die for that. I mean, it's just awesome. And the other thing is the smallest of things is just being in the gym. I know my joy spot is 94 by 50. And so when things get tough out there, and they always will at some point in time, when I go into the gym, I'm a different person. Everyone knows it. I mean, I'm just happy. So I have a place to go that's a happy place, happy spot, as they would say. And, it's pretty simple. And, when you're happy, then your food tastes different. Sure. And I'm a foodie. I love food. But my point is I eat my food with a smile on my face and I think you got to, there's a trick to that. But, as someone said, you can have a thing or you can be with people. It's not even close for me. I don't desire to have a motorcycle or to have a second house or whatever. My wife says it to me all the time. You're the simplest fool I know, because you don't, I want to be in the gym. And so, I mean, we kind of crack up about it. And I said, hey, and then when I'm not in the gym, I have a blast because, whether it's going to the movies or whatever that is, I'm liberated because I've given it my all. I mean, the thing about, for example, I wasn't successful at Charlotte, but I was very successful because I gave it my max effort. I just wasn't very good in that first year, and I made mistake after mistake. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I learned a lot and I understood it was a privilege to be in that circle. So the only thing I'm saying is that I didn't take myself so seriously after it was all done that I couldn't come to LMU and enjoy the experience of what I'm doing now because I learned a lot and, you just kind of roll with it. So like I said, is that, I think every coach just can't take himself so seriously, that you think the sun's going to rise and set on your rump. It's not. It's for the players. It's for the players. So there you go.
Well, Coach, thank you so much. I mean, just a lot of packed insight. Thank you from the Skyac.
Skyac, man. Yeah, baby. Yeah, and you got Russell White. You got one of my guys over there at Cal.
Yep, and I know he will do a great job getting that program going.
He is a good one. Yeah, no, and I'm so happy for him. But I love the SCIAC. It's a coaches league. We all know that, and it's with great kids. So enjoy yourself, Coach. I'll talk to you.
Well, that was such a fun conversation, and we thank Coach Mike Dunlap, head coach of LMU men's basketball. Thank him for coming on, and we wish him and the Lions much success this season in the WCC conference. Please make sure to like, rate, comment the Beautiful Work podcast on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you happen to be listening. All the music in today's episode are instrumental versions of songs that are on my fifth record, Grandeur, and you can find those on iTunes or on the website as well. Well, until next time, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, keep making that beautiful work. We'll see you soon.